Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of three amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we are blessed to always be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport, which if you are not listening to him and Blake Silverman over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel on the Pin Down Wednesday, Thursday evenings, you definitely should be. Those guys do a great job covering the team as well. There's plenty of podcasts to go around for you guys. And make sure you're reading Omari Sankofa II on the Detroit Free Press, all of his articles throughout the season, and would love for you guys to subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack, where I give notes and analysis, game breakdowns after every game, 4 pages of notes, 5 pages of notes sometimes, mostly on Pistons, sometimes on the other team as well. And here on Sunday evening, Omari, we got to write about a Pistons win, the second of the season, knocking off the Brooklyn Nets. Let's just start there. Takeaways, I guess, thoughts after seeing the Pistons pull out a W on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, they did something that I feel like we have not seen a lot of in the last 3 years, and that's have a better second half than first half. It seems like they've had a lot of games they start off well and fall apart, and tonight, I didn't even think the start was it wasn't a good defensive start, but both teams were not playing well defensively. And I just feel like the Pistons were missing open shots. Like Ivy had a few open misses, THJ had a few open misses early. And once the shots began to fall, I think the energy picked up on the defensive end, and it was a different game in the second half. So yeah, I mean, we have 2 wins to talk about today because they also, of course, beat Philly last week. But that's something that it seems like this team can hang its hat on, at least to an extent, is the defensive end. And they haven't done it too much for 48 minutes, but they did it for about 22 tonight. And they turned it up enough to be able to close that out completely. And yeah, shout out to you, Bryce. Like back-to-back pods, working on a Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, and then honestly, right after this, I'm going with Trevor Lane to record on his for Lakers Nation to preview the Monday night game against the Lakers. So
back to back.
Football unfortunately ended for me on Friday, so the weekends are a little bit more open. So the family, the wife is a little bit more understanding. I took the kids to the gym today. We got some shots up and stuff like that. So I did family time throughout the day yesterday, all of that. And so a little bit more free time on Sunday. So Caleb says, catching us for the first time in a while. Growing up Detroit, the Lions got to win, right? I believe
Lions got to win. Yeah,
been impressive. But as he says, everyone's watching Lions stuff, but he's here to show some love for the Pistons. And then, yeah, Cream Soda and Mr. Ray, I guess, give me a little bit of love for doing game theory and then coming over here. That's why we're a little bit late. If you are watching live, the trivia session over there went a little bit long tonight. But yeah, I mean, we got 2 wins, right? So we recorded Tuesday or whenever it was, the Pistons were 0-4 at the time, but we felt like, hey, this is a team that's competing. They had the Celtics game that we felt like they should have won. The Pacers game, they definitely could have won and just weren't able to capitalize on those. And then they knocked the Sixers off on Wednesday. And then I thought this was this one, yes, getting the first one is important, Omari. I thought this one was more important because Friday night was the first game where I was like, man, that was not a good performance.
Just play it like they didn't want to be there. Like it just completely fell apart early.
Yeah, so it was awful. It was awful from the start. They never got it back together. And then you play a Nets team where, yeah, they're 500. They've been more competitive than what people thought, but it's still a Nets team that doesn't have super high expectations. And you feel like Detroit needs to find a way to win those games. I didn't think this game was necessarily pretty in all facets, but they found a way to win. And yet again, this is a game I don't think they win last year. And this is a couple times now where I've been able to say they've found ways to win or they've come back, even in that Celtics game where it's like, I don't think this team does what we saw tonight. And so it was really good to see them get this one.
Yeah, and I think this was a win that really showed off just the extent that this team is a bit deeper, I think, than teams in the past as well, where Isaiah Stewart's in early foul trouble, and I thought Duren cleaned up a little bit in the second half. Yeah. I thought he had some rough defensive moments in the first half, and they were able to lean on him down the stretch. You have THJ, Malik Beasley, and Tobias Harris all getting it going in the second half, and I thought that flipped things in the Pistons' favor. Cade got off to a slow start. He only took one shot in the first quarter, and I think he was 1 for 3. He made his first bucket like 4 minutes into the second. And like he led the team in scoring, but he only took 13 shots. It was guys like Ivy and Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway and Tobias Harris. Those guys really stepping up and carrying the offensive load early. And even Ivy, he had a lot of misses from three tonight. It just didn't fall. But to see those veterans step up, to see them get it done defensively in the second half, those are things you need depth to do. And I think that showed a bit more tonight. Just having 3 vets who could take over games, right? Like stuff like that they haven't had that really makes a difference in these types of games.
Yeah, I mean, Beasley made some huge shots. I think one that may go underappreciated is the one in the corner on the sideline out of bounds, where I don't even know how he kept his feet in bounds and got him outside the 3-point line, but just a ridiculous shot in front of the Nets bench. And then I felt like he had the dagger, right? Tobias gets it in the post, draws a double. The possession before, he had kicked it to Cade for a really good look. Cade wasn't able to knock it down. Then he comes down on the next possession. He finds Beasley in the weak side corner, or it may have been a pass to THJ and a one more, but then Beasley's able to knock down that shot. So just, I thought those guys did play well. We probably need to talk about Tobias Harris big picture at some point throughout this episode, but he was 8 of 13 from the field. He had real gravity throughout this game, which is important. And I want to ask you this, Omari, because I was thinking about this all day in terms of, thinking if the Pistons get this win. Right now, they're essentially, if my math is halfway decent, on a 24 win pace. So I know people will look at like 2-5 and be like, oh, they're still 2-5, but that's a 24 win pace. If I told you right now you could take 24 and 48, I believe that's right. No, 58, 24 and 58, and Cade Cunningham averaging 25, 7 and 6, J.I. averaging 25 and 3, shooting the splits they are, would you take that? Or would you still be like, no, I'll take my chance at something better than that? Because I'm like, I think I would take that right now. 24 wins and those two guys being the leaders of it. I think that would be a good season for Detroit.
It would be a step forward. Like 24 wins is still like 24 wins. Like you're still probably looking at the top 6 pick, at least odds wise. So it's also a 10-game improvement from last season and a 7-game improvement from the season before. And that actually might be their best season since the season they traded Andre Drummond, I think. I think there was a season where they won 23 and then 20. So
23 and 21, 22.
Yeah.
It was 20 and 52 the year before.
And that was the COVID shortened season.
Yeah. And so 20 the year before that. The 2 COVID shortened seasons, because obviously they didn't keep playing, were 20 wins, and then 23, 17, 14.
Yeah. So just on paper, that's a step forward. And I would probably reluctantly take it. Like that is a better outcome than what we've had in recent seasons. So you probably take that. But at the same time, I think, when you have Cade a year before that max extension kicks in, and you want 24 games and you still have some big stuff to figure out. It's almost like you have to get a little bit closer to 30, I think, to have more confidence that this thing is still going in the right direction. So I have mixed feelings on it clearly, but I would reluctantly accept the 24.
I'm with you. It's just, the thing is, if you don't take the 24, there's a chance you win 16. And so it's like, I'm so terrified to watch a 16 win team that 24 sounds reasonable to me as a step forward this year, specifically with what we've seen from Cade and J.I. so far on the defensive end, the shooting splits, being able to play together, all of that. Now, the one thing I'll say is there's obviously, Wes says he'd take it happily. He only predicted another 3 or 4 wins anyway, so 24 is right there. I think the one thing is, I do think this team gets better when Asar Thompson gets back and takes. I don't think Ron Holland's ready. And I think JB has shown that him and his staff don't think Holland is ready. We've seen in some of the closer games, Holland not get second half minutes. Holland didn't play in the second half tonight until this game was over. I mean, whatever questions you have about Asar offensively and some of that stuff, I think he's better than Ron Holland right now. And so when you give Asar those minutes, like, to me, that's okay. Like, then there's the ceiling for 26, 27, 28 wins. But where I'm thinking 28 wins is like a high end outcome because you doubled your win total. 24, if you guarantee me that, I just found myself going, I would take that. And so because of that, I'm looking at 2-5, and I realize it's all context, but I'm not like, okay, they've competed 6 out of 7 games. They've won a couple of them. Yes, it would be nice to see them go 4-3 over the next 7, but I'm not sitting here upset with where this team is at based off the history of what we've seen the last 4 years.
Yeah, and it's also worth keeping in mind that the Pistons didn't get their 3rd win last season until, if I'm remembering correctly, it was New Year's Eve. They didn't win a game in November, and they almost went all of December without a win. Because I remember people were doing the who finishes with more wins in 2023
Yeah,
Lions or Pistons and whatnot.
yeah.
So if you went 24 games, you probably picked up your 3rd win a lot sooner than New Year's Eve, and if nothing else, it would point to a more steady, I guess, progression. You're not going through like this horrible dry period early, or maybe you do, and then you improve a lot towards the end. But yeah, I guess there's upside in 24 from that standpoint. Like, you add 10 more wins to what they had last season, and I think you definitely feel that difference over the course of 82 for sure.
Michael mentions losses are less important than not many games like New York game being common or not. I kind of agree with that as well, because that's the one game I've left Omari and just been like, oh, that left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, the team didn't compete. They didn't play well. I know everybody wants to see wins. I'm sure people get tired. I'm not even saying silver lining or whatever. I'm just saying the team did not play well in that game. And I thought the other games, they really competed. There was things to learn from and grow. And eventually you're going to want to see those learning experiences hit. Let's get back into this game specifically. Any takeaways from the team offensively or defensively, individuals? We can start to drive some of the individual conversations from that as well. Where do you want to go with what you maybe impressed you the most from this win on Sunday specifically?
Yeah. Team wide, and we can get into to players next, because there's a lot of individual stuff to pick up from this game. But for them to turn the ball over 17 times and also shoot 30.6% from 3 and win, I think, again, like, this is, you said it earlier, but they probably don't win this game last season. But I look at that 11 for 36, and I feel like they generated way more open shots for them to have only had like 11 makes. And there were a lot of open misses early that I think factored into them falling behind by 5. But I mean, again, you shot 30.6% from 3 and turned the ball over 17 times. And that's always been like a death sentence for this team. So I guess, like, I'm gonna flip it back on you. Like, what do you credit that to? Was it just the defense in this game that made the difference? Was it the shot making we talked about from the vets? What did you see from that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to give them. So here's where I need to give them more credit, I think, for today's performance is I went on Game Theory last week and was like, Sam, we need to talk about Cam Thomas and Dennis Schroeder because these dudes are balling. And at the time, they were both top 20 in the NBA in scoring. And it's like, this backcourt, while the Nets aren't very good and they don't really defend that well, they are going to be a nightmare for teams to defend. And the Pistons defended them. I don't think the Nets played particularly well today, but at the end of the day, you got to give them credit for Schroeder only scoring 7 points and Cam Thomas scoring 17 on 17 shots, had 2 assists and 3 turnovers. Like, I think they did a good job on everybody outside of Cam Johnson, who just kind of got off in the first half. And then the free throw attempts, and I think some of those were just silly fouls. Stu, for whatever reason, essentially fouled out contesting Nick Claxton lefty hooks. But I think I do give the credit to the defense. I really thought where this team was going to be much better this year was on the offensive end. Even before tonight's game, this afternoon's game, the defensive rating was ranked higher, 23rd, than the offensive ranking, 24th. And I assume that spread will be a little bit bigger after this game gets in there. That doesn't have tonight's game. So I do really think it's defensively. As Mr. Ray says, we did a solid job on defense, but it was an ugly game from both teams. I think that's right. I think I would agree, but give the Pistons credit for keeping a team who has scored the ball well this year.
They have the sixth best offensive rating even after that loss. Checking from NBA stats, I mean, it was like 116.6 per 100 possessions or something. So
Yeah.
a pretty good offense.
Yeah, a pretty good offense that wasn't missing. Like if they did
Yeah.
this and Cam Thomas wasn't there, I'd be like, okay, I don't know. But or if Schroeder wasn't playing, they held him down. And I think they should get credit for holding them to 92 points.
Yeah. And I think with that, even though they turned the ball over 17 times and, shot 31% from three, and on paper, it wasn't like a great offensive night for them. To me, it felt like a better offensive night than the numbers show. And I think it's just because they had so many open looks that did not fall. But the other end of that is that they also shot 48.1% overall, which shows that they were making just about everything on the interior, which isn't easy to do with Nicholas Claxton. So I would say that this win probably erased the concerns I had after the Knicks game. Like I look at the stats sheet from this game and I'm like, this does not look like a game that they should win, but they won it, and they have not had a lot of those in the last few years. So, I think Friday leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but today was like completely in the opposite direction. Like they got better as the game went, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, as it'll be interesting to watch some of the 3-point shooting. Like I can't imagine Tobias Harris is going to continue to shoot this bad from three. He's 18% coming into the game, and then he was
Fontecchio hasn't been making many.
We need to talk about Fontecchio. Like that is one player I want to talk about just in general. Like I don't know if it's his fault or whose fault or whatever, but I think him, Isaiah Stewart, Tobias Harris, I think are individuals I'd like to talk about just in general beyond obviously Cade, Ivey. Anything offense? Well, let me mention one more thing defensively, and then I want to get your thoughts just offensively, kind of big picture. I'm tired of this team getting beat backdoor, though. Like, I'm so annoyed how much they get beat backdoor, because here's the thing, Omari. They're 30th in the NBA in steals. They never steal the ball anyway. So why are we denying passing lanes that don't turn into turnovers and then giving up backdoors? It is driving me crazy. And I'm sure the people that do read my Substack are like, Bryce, we get it. You don't have to write it every single game, but I'm nothing if someone that won't beat a dead horse with a point that I like to make. Stop getting beat backdoor.
Yeah, no, it's been a bad habit for this team for a while, and like that's a funny stat. Like I would be curious to see what that looks like by game 20 once things evened out a little bit. But yeah, they still have some weird quirks that they have to iron out between the turnovers and some of the defensive lapses that they have. I think their margin for error is just a little bit wider than it's been in the last few years. This was like a margin for error win to me, if that makes sense.
No, I like it. I also wanted to mention, if you guys watched the broadcast, there was really cool insight in the second quarter. They zoomed in on JB during a free throw, and he was looking at the Nets bench during the free throw, heard the Nets call out their offensive play, and then you could see him turn to an assistant and mouth that to one of his assistants. So obviously getting the Nets play call. So I thought that was really cool. There was also a really good example of like kind of the team rebounding they had mid third quarter. Duren had contested a shot at the 3-point line. Ivey and Cade were actually the one that made rotational box outs, secured the rebound. Duren got transition dunk on the other end. So there are so many little nuanced things that I think this team is better at on the defensive end this year, Omari, than what I thought last year. Real quick, our guy Rodney Nesbitt, what up, guys? Great to catch a live, especially after a win. When is the last time we got to record a podcast immediately following a Pistons win? I don't know that we've got to do. Maybe ever. 150 episodes. I don't think ever, Omari. I'm just going to say never.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. And granted, we did sort of iron out the post-game episodes last season. We did them a lot more, I think, the season before. But yeah, I would guess maybe one of those has been a win just based on the track record.
YouTube user says JB showing a little fire has been nice. Like, yeah, he got after it today. It was fun to see. So let's go to a short break. When we come back, let's get overwhelming thoughts on the offense. Amari, just your take from this week, what we've seen. And then we'll dive into a little bit more with the individual players. And if you're watching live, thank you so much. We got a pretty good crowd right now, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, like, subscribe, rate, review, all of that stuff, and then drop a question or a comment, and we'll get into that during the end of the episode. But we'll get into the team offense right after this.
All right, we're back with segment 2, and I believe there is an offensive Pistons offensive question from today's game that you had for me, and after that, I definitely want to get into Isaiah Stewart and some of these other guys we haven't
Yeah,
talked about as much.
yeah, so I feel like we came on after the first, was it the first preseason game? We're like, oh man, like this offensive flow and movement is really, really good. Like this is the 0.5 offense we've been looking for 12 months. I don't feel like we've seen that as much. I feel like it's stalled out just a little bit. Obviously, the 3-point shooting and all of that has to happen. And I don't want to overly critique this, but I don't think we've seen the creativity with the offense that. And it's weird because I thought we saw it early and then I thought it would continue to get better. And I don't feel like that's happened. Where you just see kind of this offense big picture, not just Cade making plays or J.I. making plays, but just kind of the flow and the chemistry, I guess.
Yeah, it hasn't really been 0.5, and it seems like the ball whipped around a little bit quicker during preseason for sure. Some of that's just, I mean, teams are playing real defense now. They, probably weren't going pedal to the metal during preseason, but I have noticed that they have a lot of possessions that tend to stall out a little bit. Cade, I would say half of his buckets probably come on like stall out. I'm just going to make something happen. Yeah. Possessions, like he had the clutch 3 tonight. Like he had a few buckets tonight that were like within the final seconds of the clock. But even like Beasley, like he had the turnaround corner 3 that was right at the buzzer, and they just knocked down a lot of those tonight. So I'm not sure exactly. Like it may just be a thing where it's game 7 and you just need time to iron it out, right? It's still pretty early. It's still a new offensive system. They're still figuring a lot out, and it wouldn't surprise me if we're looking at this team, game 41, game 42, and it does resemble the 0.5 a bit more. Because I actually thought they got back to that a little bit to start the game. They had a really nice set to open the game that got Ivey like a wide open layup down the middle. And again, like they were generating open shots and they just weren't falling. So I think I think there's going to be some regression to the mean too. I think there's some shooters right now who have not really gotten it going. And once they get it going, like that has a magnetic effect, obviously. So maybe some regression to the mean will help them as the season goes on.
Yeah, as a YouTube user says, I think JB might have simplified things a little, trying to limit turnovers. Mm-hmm. I
can see that.
Unfortunately, it hasn't helped, but I can understand the idea behind it for sure. Okay, let's talk individual players. Who you want? You want to start with the bigs? You want to start with Tech? Where do you want to go as we look at some of these individuals?
Yeah, let's talk with Isaiah Stewart because like tonight was probably his worst game just with the fouls. But even when he checked in for the first time in the middle of the first, it just seems like he brings a different edge to the defense, and that's why another reason why this is a good margin win, because Isaiah didn't really play any of the key minutes, because of the foul trouble. But there's, I guess there's a debate you're starting to see online a bit more as far as should, Isaiah start just because of what he brings defensively, or should he come off of the bench? And I like the role he's in now. Like, I feel like he comes in, and because he's coming off of the bench, he immediately tries to set the tone, right? And it's not that he didn't do that when he starts, but I think it's a little bit different when you come into a game that's already going, and your minutes may be a bit more limited. Like he's been physical, like his defense has been really physical. Like he's been upping guys' grill tonight. I think he was just 15% too physical, and the refs just didn't like it. But overall, like it's been good. And for a guy that hasn't even scored that many buckets, like it just seems like he's had a positive impact whenever he's coming into the game.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the shooting. He finally took 2 in the Knicks game, but we still haven't really seen much of it. I am very much anti-starting Stu, and it's not an Isaiah Stewart thing. It's absolutely not. I've been an Isaiah Stewart defender for the last 2 or 3 years, like to the point where I've had people really come at me on Twitter or in my DMs, like, what's I think this is what he is. I think
Yeah.
this is the perfect role for him, as you outlined, and he finally gets to play in it. And I don't see any reason to do anything otherwise. I honestly think, Omari, if they put Isaiah Stewart in the starting lineup, the fan base would flip on him in the next 20 games of why is he not good enough, as the starting five man. I love him playing where he's at. His rim protection is really good, man. Like it's impressive what he's able to do. I don't have like the raw numbers in terms of attempts at the rim and all of that. I saw he defended a bunch of them. I think maybe it was in the Sixers game, but he blocks a lot of shots. He contests a lot of shots. He has good timing. He has good length. Just the raw stock numbers, he's at 3.7 whenever you do it per 36 minutes. Jalen Duren's at 1.9. Tobias Harris is at 2.1. Like there's just nobody else on the team that really has that type of steals and blocks as what Stewart brings. I think his switchability as well. Yes, Team Savant says go Lions, go Pistons. Yeah, when's the last time they both won on the same day? That'd be an interesting stat. It's just what Stewart is able to do movement-wise, Omari, I think is what I like about on the defensive end. I just would like to see him figure out what his offensive role is with this team.
I agree. And I think if he were more in that pick and pop role, like basically he's not giving up a whole lot, right? He's stretching the floor at the 5, and he's giving you rim protection on the other end. And every team wants a big that can protect the rim and shoot threes. That is one of the most valuable commodities in the NBA. And I'm curious to see if they begin to adapt the offense more to get to those looks, and also just make it clear, like when you have space, shoot, right? Like to really establish yourself as a threat, you can't turn threes down, which he still does at times. But I agree. Defensively, I think one thing we don't talk about a lot is that even though Stu's a little undersized, he's not the highest leaper. He has long arms, and he's good at just having his long arms straight up, like,
yep.
And one thing he always talks about, like since day one, he's always talked about how he likes the physical aspect of the game. And I think when he comes off of the bench and immediately he's just like, I'm about to just completely own the paint and just make things uncomfortable for everybody. Like you can feel that energy. And I feel like I notice his energy more than I have in past seasons. And I just think the role works. I also think Duren, even though he gives up some stuff on defense, just his rim gravity and the rebounding, I think are things that are difficult for opposing bigs to deal with. So you have a 1-2 punch there, but they're giving you two different things. But it seems like they found a good role for Stu in year 5 finally.
So just to get the actual numbers from the combine, Stu was 6'8.5" with shoes. Without shoes, 6'7" and a quarter. His wingspan, Omari, was 7'4" and 3/4.
Yeah.
So almost a 7'5" wingspan, equaling out to a standing reach of where's Stu at? Over 9 feet. So that's standing reach. And then you combine the timing and his ability to move. I think what I love watching Stu do in ball screens when he's in drop is he's always using his hands. Like he's always playing that cat and mouse game with the driver and the roller, which is just really, Wes, you're the man, bro. Last Lions and Pistons win was 1,050 days ago, December 19th, 2021, per Sean Corp on Twitter. Since we mentioned Sean Corp, I always like to take the chance. I would never be where I'm at without Sean Corp. He gave me my first chance over at DBB. So shout out Sean Corp. Shout out Detroit Bad Boys. Always thankful for them, and specifically him for the opportunity he gave me. Could really not thank them enough. I was going to ask you something else about Stewart, but then I got sidetracked with that amazing stat from Wes and Sean Corp. RB says Stu got to stop the silly fouls, like pushing when not necessary. Yeah, like that I was so nervous that was going to cost him the. Oh, I know what it was. Can you give people insight to the JB quote on Stu's floor spacing? I know you posted it on Twitter, but I still had people reach out to me and I directed them to your Twitter. But maybe for those people that aren't Twitter, the quote from JB.
Yeah, the quote was more or less that they noticed when he was popping that he was popping into coverage, and they felt like they weren't getting the spacing that they wanted from it, essentially. So, you have him roll, and that like him rolling, he can make an impact with the offensive rebounds and whatnot. So that's essentially what it boiled down to. And I wonder how much of that is, just needing like a really quick trigger at the 5. But that's what JB said, was that he was, popping back into coverage, and it was kind of ruining the spacing that they were trying to establish with that.
Case Crack says, wow, I thought I was feeling crazy when I was so happy that both teams had won. 1,000 days.
Yeah.
Dang. Yes, it is crazy. Lurking Death says Stu is not a starting NBA center or power forward, but he is a very valuable roster player, uniquely physical and a hustler. I don't think I could say it any better than that. That's a really good comment. I think that's exactly where I stand as well.
I would also say that I feel like it's like not quite a dying breed of center, but like how many centers just like have that type of energy? Like you think about a guy like a Kidda for Reed, but like actually impactful defensively, right? Like he has like a defensive enforcer style of basketball that you just don't see as often anymore. So that is kind of refreshing, I think, to see too. Like just a guy comes off the bench and just tries to wreck you as much as he can in 18 minutes.
Well, and to be fair to him, like we give Jaylen Duren a ton of credit for his offensive rebounding, right? Like I'll come on here and call him an elite offensive rebounder. Guess who averages more per 36 minutes this year? Isaiah Stewart. Guess who actually averages more assists per 36 minutes? Stu. Like we've already talked about the steals and the blocks. And this isn't me trying to hate on Jaylen Duren right now, and maybe we need to go ahead and transition into him. But Stu is doing some really good things. I just think that energy, that physicality, the type of player he is makes so much more sense off the bench. And I don't think Pistons fans will appreciate him as much as they think they do if he's back in the starting lineup in any capacity, whether it's the 4 or the 5. So I like where he's at. The other thing is, Jaylen Duren still does have a higher ceiling. Now, whether you think it's going to hit there or not, that's a debate. But I wouldn't change this after 7 games. And especially, I thought Duren was better today. So maybe that's a transition to him and what we're seeing with his game so far this year.
Yeah, he had a really emphatic block, I think, in the second half. And it was just like, you don't see him with like those types of emphatic blocks a lot. And you hope that there's some sort of knock-on effect, right? Like Stu's out there just absolutely hustling defensively. Paul Reed, like we've seen him in very limited minutes, but he's clearly a vet, knows what he's doing on that end of the floor. And I think that puts heat on Duren. Like he has to improve on that end because he's got guys on the roster who can supplant him. The Pistons aren't saying Stu's going to start next to you. It's Stu is going to come in and take your minutes if he's the better defensive center, right? So I think, again, going back to depth, I think that having that is something that this team hasn't had. Like they've had 0 rim protectors most seasons, right? And your best one was being moved away from the paint. So again, like I thought Duren was a lot better in the second half. I thought he wasn't quite as jumpy, and his positioning was better. He's had good defensive stretches this season, and like I think it's a good situation for him to have 2 other centers that can kind of keep that pressure as far as the rotation.
Yeah, I think his disruption has been really interesting. I think that was in the second quarter. He had back ones. He had an awesome weak side rim protection.
Yeah.
Then came down and got another one. There was some more in the third quarter where he got that on ball deflection and steal. And then he actually chased the play in transition and finished an offensive rebound putback after somebody had missed. So I thought this was really, really good. It just has to be consistent. I still don't like his ball screen coverage. I still think he struggles there. The Knicks game, I thought that really stood out. He gave up a straight line drive to Cat, and then he gave Cat a clean look from 3 and was immediately pulled there to start the second half in that game. So I think he still has to iron out some of those things, but I do think some of the disruption is progress. And we talked a lot about that. At least if he can do that, now you start to provide a little bit of value defensively. Now I've seen some questions here. Caleb actually brings it up. Is it me, or has JD been less effective offensively than last year? I would say that I at least don't think there's been strides made offensively. Amari, where are you at with what we've seen offensively from JD?
Yeah, I don't think he's been worse. I think maybe there are fewer shot attempts, than past seasons, but like his efficiency, like he was 5 for 5 today. Like I would assume he's had one of the highest field goal percentages, and if there's anything that's probably dipped a little bit, I would assume the free throw shooting, or the percentage at least, where he shot 79 last season. I'm about to see what he's shooting now.
50. 50. I looked it up 50. Because I wanted to bring that up because it was something we gave him a ton of credit for, and it hasn't been there so far this year.
Yeah, so that's probably the one area is just the free throw shooting, because if you're only hitting 50, then yeah, now you're in the Claxton range where what I think he was 4 for 10, and you want to keep putting him on the line. Like they should have put him on the line more, honestly. Like when they weren't defending, like if you're not going to defend, just foul, because I think they missed like 10 free throws as a team. But um, yeah, like I'm not sure what the dip in free throw percentage is about. It's something I could just even out as the season goes on, but that's probably the one area that I've noticed he's kind of declined in from last season.
I mean, it is interesting as you look at per 100 possessions. I went here because then kind of adjust for pace along with his minutes, which are down. His minutes per game are down this year
Yeah.
compared to last year. He's almost half the amount of field goal attempts. He averaged 15 per 100 possessions last year, Omari. He's down at 7.8 right now. Honestly, the rebounding's somewhat the same. The offensive rebounding is actually a little better than last year. Defensive rebounding is down, which
It's just the touches, like he's gotten
yeah,
the vast majority of his points off of, putbacks and alley oops. You see dump off passes here and there, but I think that's just Tobias Harris coming in and just taking up shot attempts, and THJ and some of the other guys. He'll have nights where he probably gets 10, 11 looks, but yeah, he's definitely taking fewer shots than he has.
assists are actually up a little bit. Blocks
Yeah.
are up by 1. But yeah, maybe they're just a little less use. I will say one thing I do feel like he's done a good job of in the DHO. He's kind of figured out the Sabonis drop the ball behind him as the offensive his teammates coming off the DHO, kind of give them a head start downhill.
Yeah.
Wes kind of talking about the ball screen defense, flat-footed too much, tends to drift, misses X outs, late help on drive. Like there is still some real growth. Some real growth defense. YouTube user, why you got to do this? Who was taking shots last year besides Cade Killian? Well, we've gone so many episodes without bringing up Killian Hayes, and then you got to do.
I'll also say Duren is
smiling as I say that for the audio listeners. I'm joking. I'm having fun. So.
Yeah, I also say Duren is 25 of 28 from the field. So
yeah,
he's not taking as many looks, but every single look has been quality.
Yeah, and maybe that's simply what it was, right? Like last year we saw him experimenting a little bit with the downhill drives from the top of the key and a mid-range jumper and all of that. It's just, again, if that's what you're going to be, fine, like cool. But then the defensive impact has to be real. If you're not going to space the floor or really provide a whole lot else offensively, other than simply, and this is useful, but simply play finishing, lobs and offensive boards and dump offs, then you have to be an impact on the defensive end. So that's where I'm at with Jaylen Duren. I think this Tobias Harris conversation is going to go. You want to go to Tobias or you want to go to Simone? Yeah, let's talk.
Yeah.
Well, today was a good one. I like seeing him get the moment against the Sixers. Omari, I got to admit, I'm done with the post isolations. I'm so over it. I'm not signing up for all these Tobias Harris long drawn out mid post isolations, even though they were big in the second half today. I have to admit,
one was a mismatch on Schroeder, so you have to take
that's
that
fair.
one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then the next one was on Cam Johnson, which was much less of a gimme, but he still got it.
You
know what it reminds me of? And this is like I'm like going way back. Tayshaun Prince's last season with the Pistons, I think was. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was the Lawrence Frank season, but I remember he was their leading scorer, averaging like 14 points a game, and he was probably taking 4 or 5 post ISOs a night.
Okay.
And everybody would clear out, and it was just him backing a dude down from the free throw line and taking a post. And it was just the most ugly Pistons offense I've ever seen. Like nothing against Tayshaun at all. That was not a good roster, but that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of seeing Tayshaun Prince do that back in 2012, 13, or whatever his last season here was. But tonight was good. Like he had 18 points, shot the ball well, 6 assists, 1 turnover on the night that, all their other guys with the ball struggled to take care of it. And the main thing I liked is that he's been more assertive. He was more assertive in the Philly game. He was more assertive tonight, helping them pull away in the third quarter. And that's really what they need for him. They need him to be a guy that, defenses always have to be aware of. And he should always be, probably top 3 in shot attempts on this team, unless somebody like THJ or Beasley's just really feeling it. Like I thought tonight was his most complete game yet so far.
Yeah, YouTube user says, this is my problem when people say Tobias is a creator. Mid-post jumpers aren't creating. They aren't, except in the specific scenarios I brought up where if he has enough gravity that teams are going to double him, like the Nets actually did on back-to-back possessions in a big moment of the game, that is creation, because it got Cade a wide open three, and then on the next possession, it got Beasley a wide open three. I just think most teams are going to say, go ahead, like run your mid-post isolations to Tobias Harris. It reminds me a little bit of like Jeremy Grant, I feel like, was doing a lot of this in that. I think it was the second year maybe when it kind of became frustrating, because then we had Cade Cunningham on the team. I don't want to be overly critical. He had like a big hustle play that was an offensive rebound, got Beasley second three-point attempt on the possession, and Beasley knocked it down. He's made plays throughout the year. He's been very active with his hands defensively. He does take defensive matchups. I don't know that some other players on the roster or that anybody else on the roster could take. So he is useful in that way. I think eventually he's going to start shooting better from three, right? Like, right, Omari? He's going to start shooting better from three, right?
Probably.
Fingers crossed. What?
Probably.
What do you mean probably? I need something better than probably.
I can't offer absolutes. All I can offer is a probably. I would put money on it if I were a betting man.
You're such a politician. Sorry, I had to get in one joke around this time of the year. Okay.
I got to pat myself on the back real quick. I just looked up the 2012-13 Pistons season. That was Tayshaun's last year, and Lawrence Frank was the coach. I remembered all of that.
Hey, shout out to you. I had to do Pistons trivia the other day on Saturday Slam and Jam with our guy Andrew Schlecht, and I didn't embarrass myself, so I was pretty proud of that. Yeah, there was some tough ones over there. Let's go to break. When we come back, we can talk a little bit more about Tobias if you want. Omari, I do want to mention one other thing, so let's stay on Tobias for a second. We'll talk Simone Fontecchio and then answer any questions you guys may have.
All right, we're back with segment 3, and Bryce, I believe you had one more point on Tobias, and then we can get into some questions here.
Yeah, my last thing is just like he has been impactful on the boards, and especially on the defensive boards. Here's a fun stat. Defensive rebounds only, he leads the team by almost 2 per game going into Sunday. So I do think that's impactful on a team where, you know, Jaylen Duren is an elite offensive rebounder, maybe not necessarily defensively. Isaiah Stewart even just averaging 1 more defensive rebound than offensive. Tobias and actually Cade are the numbers that stand out to me on the defensive board. So like seeing that from him.
Yeah, let's talk about Fontecchio real quick, just because we mentioned him earlier, and then we can get into some questions. Like, he just hasn't looked comfortable to me. You know, like it could just be like an early season new offense thing. Like, I'm not worried per se. Like, along with Tobias, he has been rebounding it pretty well. He had 8 tonight, and I think he's had at least one night with double digits. So, you know, he's still doing things when he's out there, but he just has not found a rhythm yet through 7 games. And that's another thing too. Like, you talk about regressing to the mean, but he's one of their top shooters, and he just hasn't been shooting it yet. So that's another guy where you hope he regress to the mean, and you could get the offense cooking, because again, they generated good threes tonight. They just couldn't hit them.
Yeah, I honestly, with Fontecchio, I don't care if he does anything else. I thought last year we saw him be neutral defensively, like big, physical. He tries hard, try to get in the right spot. I love that. Like, I love that he, you know, works hard. We see him dive on the floor sometimes. I think he needs to simplify, Omari. Yeah. It almost seems like right now he's trying to prove that he's more than a shooter. I don't need Simone Fontecchio proving that right now. I need Simone Fontecchio just banging catch and shoot shots. And so to me, it needs to be simplify. Every time he catches and can get the shot off, I think Simone Fontecchio should take it. And right now, I think he's turned down some shots. He's questioned it. It's turned into something off the dribble, or he's trying to get downhill. I'm not saying he can't do that, but I think he needs to bring it back. And I would like to see JB, Cade, like, this is part of being the face of the franchise and being the point guard, is recognizing teammates that are in situations like that and force feeding them open looks in some way if they're not getting them naturally. I think this team needs to put a priority on getting him going in regards to this, because he is a name we quickly mention when we talk about the floor spacing for this team, and they need that from him.
Yeah, they do. Like, he's put the ball on the floor a lot more than expected. And yeah, like, this seems like there's been a lot of you know, dribbling and, you know, attempts to create a little bit. And you're right. Like if he just knocked down catch and shoot threes at a high level, you're at least a neutral defender. Like that's exactly what they need. They need the Fontecchio they got for 16 games or however many it was last season when they first traded for him. YouTube user brings up the foot injury. Like I don't want to speculate, but again, it's like game 7 and like we've seen players start off cold and then they have one game where they catch fire. Like Tech may go 5 for 7 tomorrow. We're recording Sunday, so tomorrow being Monday, and we're never talking about this again. So for me, I'm still in small sample size mode, but if it goes on for another week, then at that point, it's like you probably start to talk about some sort of role shift just to get him those open threes that he needs.
Yeah, I just thought he'd have a bigger role, and it's interesting to me that he hasn't. Yeah. So Michael asks, any thoughts on Holland is done after you talk about Fontecchio? Listen, he's not as far along as what I was hoping offensively, and I had concerns anyway. I thought the offense would be a little bit better. It's just not there, Omari. Like it's pretty simple to me. From 2-point, he's not bad. 71%. He can't shoot. He can't make threes right now. Here's the thing. It's as bad as Asar Thompson was last year. It may not look as bad aesthetically in the form and everything like that. The numbers are as bad as what they were for Asar Thompson. He's not that same athlete as Asar. He's not the same rebounder. I don't think he's the same defender, even though I think it's been quality. I think it's been good. He doesn't. This is what he's like, an energy guy right now, I think is what Ron Holland is. I don't think the offensive game is even close to being there. I'm a little disappointed because I thought it'd at least be a little bit closer.
Yeah, I try to keep in mind with him that he was still 18 on draft night, and we see guys who are as young as him.
That's a good point.
Like guys like Anthony Edwards, and he had a rough start to his rookie season, but he's more of like an outlier guy. Typically, when you're that young, it takes a couple years for things to click. And like he didn't play in the second half tonight. It seems like things are moving a little bit fast. He's been very foul prone so far. Again, it's like game 7. Like I'm not worried about Ron Holland per se, but I think when Asar Thompson's out and you're looking for somebody to replicate some of that, like he's just not there yet. And you do kind of feel that void of having somebody who's a lockdown defender that could also take some of the playmaking pressure off of guys.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not like selling Ron Holland stock.
Yeah.
I don't think he's quite ready yet. To your point, this is really interesting. You want to guess how much older Asar Thompson is than Ron Holland?
I would guess 3 years.
2.5 years.
2.5, yeah.
Yeah. So Ron is 19 right now. Asar is 21, but Asar turns 22 in January. Ron will not turn 20 till July.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's easy to go like, oh, Ron played in the G League last year with the Ignite, and Asar was just coming out of the OT, and it's easy to forget that 2.5 years is a lot of development whenever we're talking about 19, 20, 21-year-olds, body development, maturity development, and just think how many more minutes in the gym somebody that's 2.5 years older than you has gotten than you have. How many more jump shots, how many more dribbles, how many more passes. So that's a really good point and something to keep in mind, specifically with Ron Holland and where he's at with his game. I want to emphasize, I'm not selling Ron Holland stock. I was hoping the offense would be a little bit better. I thought the jumper would be a little more consistent. I will say this, he's not afraid. Like no. He is aggressive. He is confident. And I like that he kind of gets after dudes and will get in scuffles here and there.
Yeah, no, he's definitely got heart, and I like his, I guess, competitive spirit. Like some guys just have like a energy when they're out there where you just know that they're having a good time and love the game. And and I still think the passing has been better than I expected. And it's not even like him making flashy passes, but just like the right pass. And I'm very curious to see I guess what the patience level is as far as the opportunity he gets and the type of growth he can make over the course of the season. Because again, it's only been 7 games, and it's not uncommon for rookies to start off slow. But yeah, I think the spotlight's probably on him a bit more than it normally would be, just because of the Asar Thompson injury. Because if Asar were healthy, then I don't know how many minutes Ron Holland would have right now. So
yeah. Wes says he's flashed a few nice plays offensively, maybe 3 or 4 times so far in 7 total games, though.
Yeah.
Let's get to a few of these questions. If you're joining us live, first, thank you so much. We actually have a really good crowd here tonight. I think people are excited about the Lions win and the Pistons win. First time in over 1,000 days. Somebody asked about all 3 of them with the Red Wings also. I don't know where or what it would take. Wes gives the palms up. So we do not know on that one. I'm sure much longer. But we're going to answer some questions now. So if you have any, go ahead and put those in the chat. John Mitchell, how concerning is Cade's control of the ball? He seems to lack urgency when making some of the passes. Cade is currently averaging 4.8 turnovers. How many did he have tonight, Omari? I closed the
7.
box score. I mean, it continues to be an issue. It's for sure.
I thought some of the ones tonight were not on him necessarily, and some of them have just been guys dropping passes. Like he had one, like a pass to Duren that would have been an open dunk, and Duren's usually money for those. He just didn't pass it. Like some of those are that, but there is the lack of urgency too. I didn't think he was as lackadaisical tonight as he was against Cleveland, for example. I thought that was on the more extreme end of what we've seen, but again, like, you know, the turnovers are not good. I still think it's something he will eventually iron out just with more reps and, you know, as you're in more situations like that. I don't know. I'm still not worried about the turnovers, especially since he did figure it out last season too. I know we keep talking about that, but after the first 16 games or so, turnovers were not an issue at all. He averaged like 3 with like almost 8 assists or whatever. So yeah, so I'm concerned just because it's been a reoccurring issue, but overall, I'm not that concerned. Not yet. If he's still doing it a month from now, maybe the concern level goes up a little bit more.
Yeah, so just looking at NBA.com, and they actually do have updated from today's game. Turnovers. Trae Young leads the league at 5.5, 5.7. Harden 5.5. LaMelo Ball 5.5. Cade is 4th at 5.1. And then you have like Ja, Fox, Scotty Barnes, all right around 4. I mean, he needs to cut it down by 1.5. Yeah. I feel like if he's gonna live in the 3.5 world of turnovers, I think with the amount of usage.
Realistically, just because of his usage rate, like that's gonna happen.
Yeah. And so that's where it needs to be. He just, we haven't seen it yet. And it continues to be a conversation. I was going to look and see. So he was at 3.4 last year, 3.7 his rookie year. So he just, like you said, if we're still talking about him averaging 4.5 to 5 at the end of the month, I think it's a real concern. And I think I'd start to get worried if it's actually going to get fixed. If he's put the games together to get it down below 4 by then I think it just kind of is what, and especially I think some of it is like the time of the game, the moment of the game, and some of that. Like, is he doing it in high leverage moments? And as long as he's not doing it in those, I'll feel a lot better. Wes says Lions, Red Wings, and Tigers. Wait, you changed it on me. Oh, no Pistons. Lions, Red Wings, and Tigers won a game the same day in 2019. He can't find it for the Pistons. So next one from the OG Omari Sankofa. Is J.I. making more bad shots, or is he taking fewer bad shots and sinking more good shots?
Yeah, I think he is taking fewer bad shots and sinking more good. No, I would say he is capitalizing on his good shots and not turning them into bad shots. I think he had a tendency to take good opportunities and just get too sped up and, you know, just miss good looks at the rim. And he's not doing that as much. And I think he's also getting to the line and enjoying contact a bit more. So I would say fewer bad shots because I think his body control has improved and he's just not getting too sped up when he gets to the rim. Like I think his shot quality overall has been pretty good. You know, where tonight the open threes didn't fall, but I mean, there's going to be nights where you miss wide open threes. Like overall, I think his shot quality is better than it's been his first 2 seasons.
So his updated numbers are 18.7 points on 44, 39, 77. Yeah. So 39% from 3 still on 5.5 attempts, even after tonight. 44% from the field is actually a little bit of a jump from last season. 4.4 free throw attempts is, would be up a little bit as well. And we had a couple comments about, Mr. Ray says once Ivy and Cade start getting those star calls, they will be very difficult to guard night to night. It's hard whenever I don't always get to see the replays in terms of, like, is he getting fouled on those? Is he just out of control? I know in my notes, I started to make comments that I feel like he's foul hunting a little bit. But it's because of his reaction. Like you can tell he's trying to go in there and draw the foul. I like that a little bit, but I feel like he's taking it a little bit too far. I think I'd like to see J.I. just get back to, like, go in there and just finish. He had a sweet one tonight. You tweeted about it.
The one-handed scoop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was nice. Like, he elevated, was straight up, took the verticality contest, and then scooped it. And I was like, okay, that you weren't trying to draw the foul. You were just going, I'm going to go finish.
And that's the stuff he was not doing in year one and year two. Like, that's, to me, he is maximizing that opportunity. And I think he had a tendency to kind of minimize opportunities. That's the biggest difference, is that he's driving and, it seems like he's reacting in the moment a lot better, which to me just means that the game's probably slowed down a bit for him.
Yeah, I do think I find myself putting more positive comments in my notes about positive process from JI than bad process. And a lot of that comes down to, I don't know if it was today or the Sixers game. One of the games he had hit like back-to-back catch and shoot threes, or had hit one, and then he had a chance to force another and he turned it down and he attacked the lane off the bounce. I was like, oh, I love that. Like, he didn't just settle for a catch and shoot three when there was time on the shot clock. He could still get downhill. So I do think, in general, to answer the question, I do think his process is better. So last one, I'm so sorry to whoever put this in the chat. I accidentally clicked off of it, but ask about Brandon Ingram, because the Pelicans season is, here it is. Buy-in says the Pelican is crumbling down. When are we going to talk about potential trade for BI? And also Team Savant says it's time for BI. I don't know, Omari. Like,
I'm not there.
To me, I'm less excited or think that this team needs this after seeing what we've seen from Cade and JI. Like, don't you want to know for sure whether JI is or isn't a second option before you bring in a guy that absolutely is only going to be happy if he's the second option?
Yeah, there's that. There's the fact that he's an expiring. So exactly what are you giving up to get him? And just also,
what are you going to pay him?
What are you going to pay him? And then why are you trading for that type of guy when you're 2-5? Like, if it's like, okay, like, let's say the Pistons are like within a breath of 500 around the trade deadline, and it's like, maybe we should just add to this. And, like, obviously there's a relationship with BI and, people in the Pistons front office, Trajan and Michael Blackstone are both with the Pelicans. So there's some familiarity there. Maybe you lock them in at a good rate, but that's something you do when you feel like you're actually competing. And at 2-5, I just don't think the Pistons are quite there yet. Like, I would need to, you're giving up some type of asset to get him probably. So I would just have to see the Pistons be a lot better than they are now to really have that discussion.
And to be fair, like, BI is having an awesome season. He's averaging 23 on 49, 41, 93, like over 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists. Like, I want to be clear, like, BI is killing it right now. I think the problem with this right now is you'd be buying high. I think you could have got him for less in the offseason, and right now he's crushing it. I'm a little bit more with Wes. I think Wes says he was more open to it in the offseason than now, based off what we've seen from Ivy through 7 games. Now, let's see if Ivy can continue this. But my question would be, I guess, as Team Savant brings up Cade, Ivy, BI, Harris, and Stu, is BI happy being the third option behind Cade and Ivy? Or are people that still want BI saying, okay, well, Ivy's just going to be the third option? And do you want to put that ceiling on him after what we've seen? I'm a little more inclined to ride this out, see what he looks like as the second option next to Cade throughout the majority of the season, and then making a decision on it after that. That's kind of where I'm at with it, not trying to fast track this thing. But yeah, I mean, BI is playing awesome. I also just wonder, like, do you lock yourself into that roster a little bit with what you gave Cade and then what you would have to give BI as well? So Yeah, again, I realize he's killing it. I completely understand that. So,
Yeah, and the Pistons are still limited by the step-in rule. So if you're not
yeah,
trading the first, then you're giving up one of your young guys, which you're gonna have to do at some point anyway. But again, like maybe that's a discussion you start to have it in earnest if, again, you're around 500 at the trade deadline and you actually want to make a push for the play-in. So you're probably still a couple months away from really having that discussion with this team.
yeah. I mean, that's a good point. If they really start hooping and playing well, and it's like, hey, this is Cage really taking the leap in different things, then I think I'd be a little bit more open to that conversation.
Yeah,
And yeah, just a reminder, even though those protections are starting to not, I think it's through 2027. So
yeah.
I think they would have access to 29 and 31 and then pick swaps and stuff like that. But
Yeah, you don't even want to go down that road when you're this bad,
yeah,
like that's like
mortgaging the future is a little concerning right
yeah,
now.
yeah, no, they need to be in accumulation mode, not giving guys away.
Yep. So, all right. It was exciting. It was fun getting to record after a Pistons win. They have what they go the Lakers on Monday. So we'll see how
Charlotte
they.
Wednesday, Atlanta Friday.
So Charlotte Wednesday. So Brandon Miller is back. LaMelo Ball is hooping. So that will be an interesting game. Mark Williams not playing for Charlotte, so that could be another big game for Jaylen Duren. And then you said Atlanta Friday, who seems to be dealing with some injuries
Yeah,
with Atlanta. So see what kind of week the Pistons can have after winning 2 of their last 3. When we saw this last year, they went on a 28 game losing streak. So hopefully history does. Did I say winning streak or losing streak? I said losing streak, right?
I think you said losing streak.
Okay, because winning streak would not be correct. So hopefully history does not repeat itself, Omari.
Yeah, ideally not. Yeah, Charlotte, that's a winnable game. Atlanta, that's a winnable game. Next week's tough, but then you have Toronto. So schedule is starting to even out a little bit. So, ideally we'll have wins to talk about every week, and we won't have to wait till New Year's to talk about win number 3. I guess that's the next milestone.
Yep. Keep knocking them down. Keep hitting those milestones throughout the year. Baby steps.
All right, cool. With that, I will go ahead and close this out. Again, big thanks to everybody that joined us tonight. We had a great Sunday night crowd.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor in chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big thanks to Wes as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.